Hello and welcome to BYJU'S IAS. Let's get started and look into our daily quiz. Let's look into the first question. Consider the following statements with respect to Lokpal. The administrative expenses of the Lokpal shall be charged upon the Consolidated Fund of India. The salaries, allowances of the chairperson shall be same as those of the Chief Justice of India. There is a limitation period of 7 years to file complaints. It can initiate a probe suo motu into corruption case against any public servant. Anonymous complaints can be accepted. Which of the above statements is or correct? The answer to this is 1, 2 and 3. Why have we taken this practice question? Because this article here makes a mention of Lokpal. Let us try and understand what are these options all about. When you look into the first option, yes, the first option is right. The administrative expense of the Lokpal shall be charged upon the Consolidated Fund of India. So when we look into this particular part, the administrative expenses, which means to say the salaries, the allowances, the pensions, all of which, even the expenses that has been incurred by the Lokpal, will be ultimately taken from the Consolidated Fund of India. When you look into the second statement, the salary allowances of the chairperson of the Lokpal shall be the same as that of the Chief Justice of India. This is once again the right statement, but also remember, you have other members when it comes to the Lokpal. Those members will get the salary similar to that of the judge of the Supreme Court. It is only the chairperson who would be getting the salary similar to that of the Chief Justice of India, but when it comes to the other members, it is equivalent to that of the judge of the Supreme Court. What is the third statement? There is a limitation period of 7 years to file the complaint. What does this statement mean? Let's say there is one of the incidents which has occurred 7 years ago, a corruption issue, or you have to file a complaint against a public authority where it is asking you for bribe, so on and so forth. So there is a corruption issue involved when it comes to a particular case of the government servant, but you have to report that particular case within a time period of 7 years from the date of the occurrence. If this particular time period has expired or it is more than 7 years, in such a situation one would not be able to file the complaint. Here, since there is a limitation of 7 years, this statement is once again right. Now when we look into the fourth statement, it says it can initiate a probe suo motu into the corruption case against any public servant. This is a wrong statement. It would not be able to take up a particular case suo motu, which means on its own what it requires is a complaint, and anonymous complaints cannot be accepted by the Lokpal. Since the options 4 and 5 are wrong, the answer to this would be 1, 2 and 3. What is this article speaking about? It is speaking about the director of inquiry. What do you mean by it? There is something called as the inquiry wing of the Lokpal. This is headed by a director. Ideally, the government will have to appoint the director. Why? Because it is this particular inquiry wing which will investigate, inquire, provide evidences about that particular person who has done a corruption act. So basically, if there is a government servant who has engaged in corruption, what we require is the evidence. What we require is the preliminary inquiry that has to be done. So it is this inquiry wing which will basically do that. But as of now, the director who heads this inquiry wing is not appointed by the government, is what is this article all about. Now let's look into the next practice question. With reference to Tipu Sultan, which of the following statements are correct? He took the help of the French to set up an arms factory at Dindigul. The Third Anglo-Mysore War, fought by Tipu, ended with the Treaty of Madras. Which of the statements are correct? The answer to this is none. Why? That is because the arms factory at Dindigul was not set up by Tipu Sultan, but instead it was set up by his father, which happens to be Hyder Ali. So kindly remember, this was not set up by Tipu Sultan, but it was set up by Hyder Ali along with the assistance from the French. Now when we look into the second statement, it says Third Anglo-Mysore War was fought by Tipu, ended with the Treaty of Madras. This is once again a wrong statement because the treaty that they signed was the Treaty of Seringapatam. Because Tipu happened to lose this particular war, he had to pay heavy compensation to all the parties that he fought against. This included the English, which is led by the British East India Company. Then we have the Nizam of Hyderabad. Then we have the Maratha Empire as well. So he had to pay damages to all these people who were involved in the war. In fact, Tipu was also unable to pay the indemnity of about 330 lakhs of rupees, which is why he even had to surrender two of his three sons as hostages of the war when it comes to this particular treaty. Why have we taken this practice question? Because this article here makes a mention of Tipu Sultan. Now let's look into the next practice question. Which of the following statements are correct? Great Barrier Reef is the world's largest coral reef system located in the Gulf of Carpentaria. Australia is the world's largest coral reef nation. The answer to this is none. Why? That is because when you look into the Great Barrier Reef, yes, it is the world's largest coral reef system, but this is not located in the Gulf of Carpentaria, but instead it is located in the Coral Sea on the northeastern side of Australia. So kindly remember, if you look at the location, it is on the northeast side and it is present in the coral reef and not in the Gulf of Carpentaria. Now when you look into the second statement, it says Australia is the world's largest coral reef nation. Immediately when you look at this particular question, you might get confused and you might say that this is the right answer, but that is not. Once again, the answer to this would be Indonesia. Indonesia is the world's largest reef nation. It has more than 50,000 square kilometers of reef extending to about 5,000 kilometers from east to west and harbors nearly 17,000 islands. So the answer to this would be Indonesia. It is not Australia. Kindly remember, Indonesia is the world's largest coral reef nation. Now, if we look at coral reefs, where are they present in India? In India, they are present in the Gulf of Mannar. They are present in the Andaman and Nicobar Islands. They are present in the Lakshadweep Islands, and finally the Gulf of Kutch. Also remember, from the preliminary examination point of view, this Great Barrier Reef supports multiple species in this particular area. As a result, it was selected as a World Heritage Site in the year 1981. This is also important from the preliminary examination point of view. Now let's look into the next practice question. Which of the following statements best describes moon wobble? It is an intense geological activity on the largest moon in the solar system. When there are two full moons within a month, the second full moon is called a moon wobble. It is a cyclical shift in the moon's orbit that happens every 18.6 years. None of the above. The answer to this is C, where the moon wobble stands for cyclical shift in the moon's orbit that happens every 18.6 years. What exactly happens? This moon wobble as a concept was first reported in the year 1728. What happens? This is nothing but a regular swaying of the moon's orbit. This wobble takes about 18.6 year period to complete, and this particular cycle continues to happen on a periodic basis, which is why it is called as the moon wobble. In half of the moon's 18.6 year cycle, Earth's regular daily tides are suppressed, which means high tides are lower than normal and low tides are higher than the normal. And at the same time, in the other half of the cycle of this moon wobble, tides are amplified as well, which means high tides get higher, low tides get lower. And now there is an article in the Indian Express which goes on to say, according to some of the studies made by NASA scientists, they say that in the near future, when this moon wobble happens, and because of the added disadvantage of the climate change, this could increase the flooding in the coastal areas, and as a result, people in the low-lying areas may see increasing flooding and it may get worse, says United States of America's NASA. So the combination of moon's gravitational pull, rising sea levels and climate change will continue to flood the coastal areas across the world, and this could be a major devastation, says this article. Now let's look into the next practice question. The mind of the makers of the Constitution of India is reflected in which of the following? The preamble, The fundamental rights, the directive principles of state policy, the fundamental duties. The answer to this is the preamble. This is a straightforward question. If you've gone through Lakshmikant, you should be in a position to answer this question. So the mind of the makers of the Constitution of India is in the preamble, which ideally gives the overall perspective of what the Constitution of India is. It speaks about equality. It says that we, the people of India, having solemnly resolved to declare India into a sovereign, socialist, secular republic as well. So all the major aspects that is present in the entire Constitution is given in the preamble. So the mind of the makers of the Constitution is present in the preamble. This happens to be a previous year question from the year 2017. Now let's look into the fact of the day. The fact of the day for today's discussion is midday meal scheme. What is this midday meal scheme? It is one of the schemes undertaken by the Government of India, which means to provide one meal to the children, basically to increase the enrollment in the government schools, government aided schools, local body schools, special training centers, madrasas, maktabs supported under the Sarva Shiksha Abhiyan. So what are the objectives of the midday meal scheme? It will provide meals to the children who attend the schools. So what are the three objectives? Since it is providing meals to the children, we have to understand that three important criteria are met. One is the education, second is the health criteria, third is the nutritional criteria. How does it improvise on the education? People in the rural areas might not be able to get enough amount of food, which is why they may not be able to attend the schools as well. As a result, they go and work in places. Why? Because they would be able to get minimum amount of money so that they can spend their particular day. But what is the government doing? The government is providing midday meal scheme, and as a result, nutritional food is provided to the children at schools. On one side, a nutritional food is provided to the children. On the other side, they may attend the schools as well, and ultimately this will increase the educational objectives of this particular scheme. So they are providing free midday meals, and this means they are also provided nutritional status. What they will get is enough proteins, and ultimately the health of that particular student or children is also taken care of by this midday meal scheme. When it comes to the midday meal scheme, this happens to be a centrally sponsored scheme. What do we mean by this? It means both the central government and the state government pitches in when it comes to the finances. So when it comes to the finances, the central government provides free food grains to the states. So the central government would provide the food grains, but who will take the cost of cooking? That will be the state government. So the food grains will be provided by the central government, but when it comes to the infrastructure, the cost of cooking, transportation of the food grains, payment to the cooks and the helpers will all be provided by the state government. That is why this is a centrally sponsored scheme which will have the cooperation both by the central government as well as by the state government. What has been the successful factors of this particular scheme? Basically, this has increased the enrollment rate. This has made sure that all the children from the social economic backgrounds come to this particular place. They get educated, and at the same time, this will improvise the regularity of the education, provide the nutritional benefits, and at the same time, it will also increase the socialization benefits when it comes to the children as well. They will learn to interact as well. They will learn to get more friends as well, and ultimately this will boost the idea of socialization. These are some of the successful factors when it comes to the midday meal scheme. However, there are few challenges and failures when it comes to the midday meal scheme as well. What are those failures? First, what we require is the infrastructure for the cooking. But according to few CAG reports, it goes on to say enough infrastructure is not provided by the state government in multiple states. Because suitable infrastructure is not provided, this means the hygiene that is required to be maintained for cooking these food items are also getting violated. there have been certain examples in multiple states in India where children have passed away, or it has also led to them being taken to hospital after consuming this food as well. So on one side, infrastructure is not being provided, the hygiene that has to be taken care is not being taken care, and as a result, children are the major sufferers. Added to this, children will have to consume the food. But this particular scheme in certain states does not pay heed to the quality of the food and the quantity of the food as well. That is the major problem when it comes to multiple states in India. And who are the people who are cooking? In most of the states, there have been examples where it is the teachers who are cooking. Ideally, there has to be a cook. Ideally, there has to be helpers who should be assisting these cooks as well. But in case there have been cases where it is the teachers who are cooking, and ultimately, where is the education that is being served to the children who come to this educational center. So these are some of the challenges when it comes to the midday meal scheme. So this particular article currently goes on to say that girls who have had access to free lunches provided at government schools had children with a higher height to age ratio, which was not present with girls who were not provided with the midday meal scheme. So this is one of the other significant factors when it comes to this particular scheme. It is this that we have to understand in reference to this article. This is it for today. Thank you for watching. All the best.